All right, welcome to Lesson 4, all about rhetorical appeals. Our learning objective for this lesson is to be able to define and identify ethos, pathos, and logos appeals within a text. Now let's go ahead and lead with our guiding questions. What are rhetorical appeals? Perhaps a little bit of review there. And then what do they actually look like within a work of rhetorical text? Let's go ahead and see if we can't brush a little dust off of these concepts. As I imagine, many of you are coming to English 11 with some familiarity of ethos, pathos, and logos. So let's go ahead. I'm going to share with you a brief commercial from Chevy, and I would like you to kind of hold on to the details of this commercial and think about the question, what primary appeal is being used to persuade our audience?
Lots of light. I don't understand. Did I do something wrong? Are you breaking up with me?
Slow and steady.
The official sudden romantic spectacles.
So hold on to those details and we'll circle back around to this commercial at the end of the lesson. All right, so what are rhetorical appeals? Well, we got to take this one way back, all the way to the time of Aristotle. So the concept of rhetorical appeals is attributed to our Greek philosopher Aristotle, who wrote about these concepts way back in like 384 to 322 BC. So these are very old concepts. Now, Aristotle believed that of all of the different methods that one might use to persuade their audience of something, all of those different methods can essentially be boiled down into 3 different categories. And those categories are ethos, pathos, and logos. All right, so you can actually see the roots inherent in each of these words. Ethos, ethics, pathos, path, and logos, or logic. Now let's break each of these down a little bit more specifically. Ethos, if you remember, is a credibility appeal. It refers to the source's trustworthiness and authority, why your audience should want to believe what that person is saying. Now, this can be affected by the writer's reputation as it exists independently from the message. For example, perhaps the speaker has expertise in a particular field, maybe they have a previous track record, or maybe they're just known as a particularly likable, trustworthy, and honest person. For whatever reason, they have these different aspects of their identity that make us want to believe them. Now, if the speaker does not necessarily have any of that ethos or known credibility that they bring to their speech, they can increase their credibility through other means. For example, citing evidence from other credible sources, or essentially borrowing the credibility of others. They can use language that's appropriate to the audience and the subject of their speech. And lastly, they can also, when actually delivering this speech, use a restrained, sincere, and/or fair-minded voice. All of these help to increase the likability or trustworthiness of that particular speaker. And then last but not least, I promise this is not just an English teacher thing. We also want to make sure that our work is grammatically sound and that we're using appropriate and elevated vocabulary, which can make us sound much more credible. All right, so now let's talk about those pathos appeals or emotional appeals, the ones that really tug at our heartstrings and then persuade us through that means. So this may be an appeal to your audience's sense of fear, sympathy, responsibility, excitement, morality. It can be positive emotions as well as negative emotions, because both can be tremendously powerful. It can also consist of emotionally loaded language or very emotionally charged stories and anecdotes. Maybe they include vivid descriptions that really help to paint a certain picture associated with a certain emotion. We know that tone can be very powerful in terms of projecting the emotion or the attitude of the speaker onto their audience. Figurative language and connotative meanings as well. We know that connotative meanings are sort of the associations that we make with certain words or phrases or images that carry emotion along with it. All right, so when we think pathos, we're talking about tugging at those heartstrings, those emotions to persuade your audience. Last but not least, logos, our logical appeal. Now here we're really attacking our audience's sense of what makes sense, right? What is rational, what's reasonable. Now this may appear in the form of evidence, right? For example, facts, statistics, research findings, maybe expert testimony. Sometimes we think of logos as being purely numbers based, but really think of it more in terms of factual or hard, credible evidence. Now, you can also increase your logos by having a strong internal consistency within your message. So that means that your claim is really, really clear, that your reasoning is really, really sound, and that your supporting evidence is truly effective. It actually backs up what you're trying to prove. All right, now let's take a look at those three concepts within the lens of a piece of rhetorical text. Now, we are going to listen to a recording of a very famous speech entitled "Ain't I a Woman" by Sojourner Truth. Now, Sojourner Truth was a woman that was both a Black abolitionist, women's rights activist, and an ex-slave. So she speaks from this intersection of tremendously dynamic lived experience. And we're going to look at the way in which that impacts the appeals that she uses within her argument. Now, this is an old speech, so we don't have any radio or video of her actually delivering it, but we do have a video of Kerry Washington, the fabulous Kerry Washington, delivering this speech. So let's listen. And let's keep our eyes and our ears peeled for those three rhetorical appeals.
In 1851, the Black abolitionist and former slave Sojourner Truth spoke to a gathering of feminists in Akron, Ohio. The spontaneous speech, only a few minutes long, was a landmark moment in feminist and abolitionist history.
Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women at the North all talking about rights, the white man gonna be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages, lifted over ditches, and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages, or over mud puddles, or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as any man when I could get it. And I could bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children, seen most sold off into slavery. And when I cried out with a mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? And they talk about this thing in the head. What is it they call it? Oh, that's right, yeah, intellect. That's it, honey. Well, what's that got to do with women's rights and Negroes' rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint and yours holds a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half measure full? That man in the back there, he says women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Well, where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? He came from God and a woman. Man didn't have nothing to do with it. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, well, these women here together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And they asking to do it. The men better let them.
So let's think about her identity as both a woman and a freed slave and how that adds to the persuasiveness of her speech. Would that be ethos, pathos, or logos? Definitely ethos, right? That lived experience gives her tremendous credibility to speak out in favor of equality. All right, now how about this next piece of evidence where she speaks to the children that she has borne and seen sold off into slavery? Ethos, pathos, or logos? Definitely pathos. This is a very emotionally evocative detail that just gets right to your heart because you are talking about a tremendously painful detail of her life that, again, really, really helps to push forward her argument, but in a very different way. Now, how about here? What's that got to do with women's rights or Negroes' rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint and yours holds a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half measure full? Definitely logos. This is a logical argument, not unlike this last argument that she makes when she describes the way Christ came from a woman and man had nothing to do with it. Each of these are logical arguments that target the audience's brain. But you can see here she's using a variety of all three. And that's the real power of ethos, pathos, and logos. When used in combination, not one too much out of balance with the other, that's when we see some really strong argumentation. All right, so if we go back to our opening commercial here, what appeal is being used? Solidly pathos. Very few statistics or details or pieces of evidence provided about that car. But boy, does that cute puppy tug at my heartstrings and make me want to go buy a Chevy. All right. So in conclusion, our three methods of persuasion or rhetorical appeals are ethos, pathos, and logos. And we want to remember that the strongest arguments in